Dr. Begich doesn't put on airs, but he's been an expert to the European Union Parliament. He, of course, has been the president of both the Alaskan Federation of Teachers and the Anchorage City Council of Education. And I can get into his doctorate all day. His brother is a U.S. Senator. His father was was Nick Begich Sr. This is a short segment, long segment coming up. But, Doc, getting back into this, what are your concerns overall with something like the Hadron Superconducting Super Collider? And are there other technologies and other scientific operations that you're more concerned about?
Well, the risks associated with big science, is there, and they even identified. I mean, the idea of creating a catastrophic event with this type of technology, again, this is why we need a little closer scrutiny, and I am actually more concerned about the things that we don't see. I mean, what we see in the open literature is certainly hair-raising in some cases and pretty disturbing in others. But what we do know is that the direction in which the technologies have moved is really more about how do you affect biological systems like human beings and other systems in a way where you can literally manipulate the players. I mean, when you think about military interventions, and we're looking at it right now. You look at our budget on the rebuild on countries after we go in and annihilate them. It's pretty costly expense, and a lot of this is based on the idea that, hey, is there a better way? Is there a way to affect the human beings without tearing up their infrastructure so we have to rebuild it? And there is, and it's this direction in technologies that allows that possibility. And the difference is when you start to target the human being in this way, it is much, much different than bombs and bullets, and starts to raise the bigger kinds of questions of what's rational. I mean, we've said biological and chemical weapons are immoral, and yet weapons that affect in a much more profound way than chemicals aren't even restricted at all. And this, I think, is critically important. Is the reactions of chemicals or chemical constituents that were so appalling in World War I have been replaced by electronic systems that essentially deliver the same kind of effects. So we're not talking about a different outcome. We're just talking about a different delivery system.
And to simplify it, you're talking about mind control. And I've seen the patents that you've covered.
Right.
I've looked at them at the patent office. I've seen articles in the Baltimore Sun where it goes, right, oh, DARPA's looking at putting up towers to calm you during
right.
emergencies. And,
right.
and I mean, just like 10, 15 years ago, they'd make fun of us talking about HAARP. Now it's mainstream. Now more and more, they're like, we are going to put cameras everywhere to make sure that are AI and make sure you're behaving yourself in your house. We are going to mind control you. This is a brave new world. And so you talk about, for whatever bit of technology we see, there's an iceberg beneath that.
Right.
I mean, how much of this stuff do we even know about, Doc?
Very, very little, actually. What you see in the open literature is just a fragment, a grain of sand on the beach of knowledge, if you will. There's just so much more out there. When you look at the area of any of the areas that we've covered, from mind effects to weather effects, we've been covering them now over 15 years and consistently, and this is the true test, in my opinion. You go back to our original writings in 1994, and nothing has changed. You can look through those articles, those books, the materials we've produced, and we have not changed our opinion one iota. The facts that we identified then and the sources that we reference them, primarily government, military, and mainstream documents that were unclassified, nothing has happened to change our opinions, only to prove that we were correct. And you've experienced the same thing in a lot of your work. And the mainstream does eventually catch up, but usually it's sort of when the train has left the station and is already arriving somewhere else. That's where we are on this technology. And again, the idea of affecting weather systems, of affecting other forms of living organisms, including, the latest thing with the birds. Now we hear another situation in Louisiana, very similar to what was in Arkansas.
Europe?
Yep. And so there was a very interesting study, and this gets back to, people want to blame the chemistry. And I was in a conference in Brussels. It was a closed conference for a group called GLOBE, which is 44 governments, legislators. And in their 12th General Assembly in 1997, I attended, And the people that we were lecturing with on the other side was a group that had just written a book on chemicals creating false hormones in the environment. And I was talking with the guys from MIT and from Washington that were responsible for that. And the overlay is energy itself, because it triggers very bizarre chemical reactions.
That's right. Instead of putting chemicals in you, they can use harmonics or waves to make you produce it yourself. Stay there, doctor. We'll be right back.